Dinner gave my brain a headache, the midnight call that shocked me. I don't get shocked easily. As a brain specialist for over 30 years, I've seen hundreds of stroke cases, from mild to severe. But that night was one I'll never forget. 11:47 p.m. The phone rang. On the other end was an emergency responder from Columbus, Ohio. "We have a 72-year-old male patient. Facial droop, slurred speech, severe dizziness. History of high blood pressure." Immediately, I understood the situation. A minor stroke. But when I arrived, a chill ran down my spine. His name was Walter, a retired math teacher. Lying in the hospital bed, he tried to mouth his wife's name, but his voice was off, like it wasn't his own anymore. But that wasn't the most shocking part. His blood pressure was stable. Heart rate normal. Other vitals nearly all unremarkable. No head trauma. No sudden stress during the day. So why was his brain blocked? Why did blood flow jam up like it had just taken a hard hit? And then, Walter's wife Helen gripped my hand, her voice trembling. "We just finished dinner around 9. He said he felt a bit tired, then sat down to watch TV. Around 11, he collapsed onto the floor." I asked, "What was for dinner?" She answered, not thinking it was anything serious, "Just a serving of roast beef, white bread, some salad. Then he had his usual vanilla ice cream for dessert." That moment, I froze. Not because of the meal, but because I saw that dinner quietly squeezing the blood vessels in his brain little by little in silence. But what unsettled me most wasn't the symptoms. It was what he had eaten just hours before, the very thing millions still believe is harmless. Seniors still think, anything is fine as long as it's easy to digest. I no longer trust that belief. I remember, back in my residency days, we were taught, if an elderly patient eats well, digests fine, and sleeps enough, then they're basically okay. And I believed that. For many years, I would tell my senior patients, as long as your dinner is light it's fine. But after Mr. Walter's emergency case, I began to question that very belief. Something didn't sit right. How could a healthy person with stable blood pressure still suffer a stroke after what seemed like a light dinner? I started reviewing the records of elderly patients who had minor strokes in the past 2 years. And then, one pattern stood out clearer than all the written notes: they all ate dinner just like any typical senior, yet still had a stroke. They didn't eat fast food. They didn't drink alcohol. They didn't abuse medication. They ate a plate of white rice with braised fish, a bowl of minced pork porridge, a little fruit for dessert, or sometimes just a warm glass of milk before bed. Simple. Easy to digest. But it was the very thing that made blood to the brain thick and slow moving. That's when I realized a harsh truth: we don't just need to eat until full, we need to eat so that brain vessels can breathe. I asked myself, if the foods we thought were healthy are quietly disrupting the brain at night, what else might be happening in silence? From that moment on, I stopped telling patients to just eat something as long as it's light. Because a light dinner isn't always a right dinner. And to understand what truly happens after we eat, I began tracing the blood flow and following it to the brain. Because sometimes, the brain doesn't speak with words, but with a drooping face, a stiff leg, a faded memory. The brain doesn't speak, but it's suffocating. Every night I used to believe, a meal couldn't harm the brain. But after years of monitoring nighttime strokes, I had to admit it's those seemingly harmless dinners that are suffocating the brain every single night. I remember Mrs. Linda, 68 years old, living in Tampa. Her dinner was usually a slice of white bread, a bit of peanut butter, and a glass of unsweetened milk. She called it my way of keeping the belly warm before bed, and had kept that routine for decades. But when I looked at her sleep tracking data, I noticed something strange. her brain wasn't resting the way she thought it was. The deep sleep phase, when the brain recovers, clears out, and regenerates, barely showed up. Refined carbs in the bread caused blood sugar fluctuations, triggering strong insulin release right when the brain needs the calmest state to heal itself. If you still want a light snack at night, a slice of whole grain bread or a cup of caffeine-free herbal tea may be a better choice. But it doesn't stop at the bread. For many people, the harm lies in the tiny desserts after a meal. Mr. David, 74 years old in Arizona, loved his desserts. A small spoon of vanilla ice cream, or sometimes a glass of unsweetened grape juice. Just for fun, Doc, he laughed, I only eat a little. Just that little bit, but the sugar in the ice cream or juice was enough to slightly constrict the capillaries, especially in the hypothalamus, the area that controls sleep and memory. Blood no longer flows as smoothly as before. Symptoms like forgetting words, misspeaking, waking up tired, gradually became more frequent. If you feel the need to round out the meal, try a thin slice of apple or a few walnuts. Natural sweetness, gentle and much friendlier to the brain. But the real risk comes from the most familiar thing, sitting still after eating. Many elderly people from New York to San Diego still keep this habit. Eat, sit in an armchair, turn on the TV, and fall asleep without realizing. For Mr. Walter, dinner ended at 9. After that, he never left the chair until he collapsed from a stroke at 11. Lack of movement after meals causes blood to pool in the stomach, reducing blood flow to the brain. The vessels in the frontal lobe, which handle emotion, memory, alertness, are starved without anyone knowing. And just like that, night after night, the brain's blood supply slowly runs dry. Just standing up, walking a few laps around the house after eating, gives your brain a chance to live healthier. It's not one wrong meal that causes a stroke. It's many nights of familiar tastes and motions. But forgetting that the brain also needs to breathe. 3 dinners that seem healthy but quietly push you closer to stroke. There's a paradox I've realized after more than 30 years as a doctor. It's not the people who eat recklessly at dinner that worry me. It's the ones who eat very properly. They don't drink alcohol, don't fry their food, don't touch fast food. They eat salad, veggie soup, fruit. They believe they're doing the right thing for their health. And that's the scariest part. Because what they believe is right is sometimes quietly strangling blood flow to the brain each night. No loud symptoms. No clear warning signs. Just waking up with a heavy head, a slower memory, and thinking, maybe it's just aging. Esther's story was what sparked that doubt. I met her during a routine checkup in Portland. She ate tuna salad every night, no soda, no extra salt. A model meal by all standards. And yet, she often felt dizzy when standing up. Blurry vision for a few seconds. Just slight, but frequent. I got suspicious. Reviewed the canned fish and her water intake, and I realized salt in the fish combined with dehydration mildly constricted brain vessels, reducing blood flow. A very small sign, but the early step of a subtle stroke. If you love tuna salad, the advice is to use steamed fresh fish, reduce salt, and don't forget a warm glass of water after eating. Esther's story made me revisit other wholesome meals. And then, I met John, a man who lived kindly his whole life with a simple bowl of veggie soup. John's story so kind. Even the blood to his brain fell asleep in Minnesota. John ate dinner with a bowl of veggie soup, a few slices of toast. No oil. No sweets. Ate on time. But every evening he felt foggy-headed. Sleepy, easily lost in thought. His wife said, he often loses track while telling stories. Mid-sentence, he drifts to something else. No sign of Alzheimer's. But clearly, something was off. I analyzed his meal and found potatoes, carrots, white bread, all fast-digesting carbs. They caused his blood sugar to rise and drop quickly, leaving the brain low on fuel, flickering like a dim light. For dinner soups, if you want to keep your memory sharp, swap white bread for whole grains, add avocado or olive oil to help stabilize blood sugar through the night. After John's story, I truly began to worry. Because if a meal like that could dull memory, what's happening with the millions who still eat fruit desserts each night? Nancy's story: gentle sweetness and a haze in her memory. Nancy lived in Texas, cheerful, energetic. Her dinner was simple: a light meal, followed by some grapes, a few bites of chilled watermelon. "I don't eat cake, doctor, I know how to take care." I believed her. But her sleep told another story. She often woke up in the night, and in the morning felt foggy in the head. Lately, she's been losing words mid-sentence. As if the thought was coming, but turned the other way. The issue is, natural sugar in fruit is still sugar. And when eaten at night, especially cold fruit, it doesn't just spike blood sugar but also mildly constricts intestinal vessels, pressing on circulation, affecting brain blood flow. If you still want that complete flavor after dinner, try a warm ginger tea or a few almonds, gentle but not stimulating to the brain while it's preparing to rest. I share these 3 stories not to scare anyone. I share them because I myself once didn't realize. I used to think stroke comes from big stress, high blood pressure, bursts of anger. But no. It can also come from very small, very gentle things, repeated every night. And if you've ever thought, I eat light, so I'm doing well, then maybe it's time we ask again, does that dinner truly help the brain rest? Just one small change at dinner and your brain's blood vessels will be saved. I'll never forget that morning when Mr. Walter woke up after being admitted overnight for a mild stroke. His voice was shaky, but clear. He asked, "Doctor, is there a way I can avoid coming back here again?" I held his hand and replied, "Yes. But not through medication. Through your dinner starting tonight." The first week, I didn't make him cut anything out. I only asked for one thing: finish dinner before 7 p.m. No matter what he ate, just eat earlier than usual. That one seemingly small change became a major turning point. Because when eating before 7, his body had time to digest, and blood didn't pool in the gut when the brain needed rest. His sleep improved in just the first week. He no longer woke up with a heavy head. Seeing results so quickly, I knew I couldn't stop there. One good habit made a small change. But if we added a second one, blood flow to the brain would be even lighter. In the second week, I suggested changing dessert. Instead of ice cream or grape juice, I offered a small handful of lightly roasted almonds or a few thin slices of apple. "But doctor, there's no sweetness," he laughed. I replied, "There's no sweetness on the tongue, but there's lightness in your head each morning." And indeed, after a few days, he found he woke up fewer times at night, and mornings were no longer foggy. When the brain gets a full night's rest, we don't need anything fancy, just a bit less sugar is enough. But to boost circulation even more after meals, I needed one more step. In the third week, I asked him to take a walk after dinner. Just 10 minutes around the house. No rushing, no strain. At first, he was hesitant. But his wife walked with him, and that became a small joy each night. As blood began to flow more smoothly, pressure in the gut eased, and cerebral circulation noticeably improved. He slept deeper, felt more refreshed, and his memory began to brighten again. In just 3 weeks, I saw a man who seemed to be heading to the other side of health slowly come back clear, sharp, and full of hope. And by the final week, he was the one who asked me the question that moved me most. After 30 days, Mr. Walter had become a different person. No sleeping pills. No supplements. Just 3 small changes, eat early, choose the right dessert, gentle walk after meals. Each sounds simple, but together, they unleash the entire blood flow to the brain, helping it rest, repair, and regenerate the way it's meant to. You might be wondering, that's it? Yes, that's it. Because for someone over 60, the greatest miracle isn't in complexity. It's in consistency, subtlety, and timing. And I know, if Mr. Walter could do it at age 72, anyone watching this video can start tonight. Because your brain doesn't need extravagance. It just needs a little space to breathe before it's too late. Unexpected recovery. Mr. Walter's story: after 3 months, 30 days passed faster than I expected. A man once hospitalized for a mild stroke was now actively changing every meal, every evening. And the strangest part was, he didn't feel like he was treating an illness, he felt like he was living again. On the first morning of the second month, Mr. Walter brought a piece of paper. When he handed it over, I thought it was an old prescription. But it was a few short lines from a handwritten journal. He wrote about his sleep the night before, about the warm glass of water he drank at 9 p.m., and a sudden memory of an old math problem he used to teach when he was working. The handwriting was still a little shaky, but the thoughts were clear. He said, "I'm not writing for anyone. Just so my brain remembers who I used to be." Most people wait for memory to return before doing anything. But Mr. Walter was different. He called memory back, by writing. One Wednesday afternoon, I was reading through charts when I heard laughter in the hallway. I recognized it instantly. It was Mr. Walter's voice. For the first time in years, his voice rang clear, not breathless, not hoarse. He walked in, face beaming, and told a story about buying parsley but accidentally getting mint. That storyteller was no longer a stroke patient. He was a man present with memory and with his own voice. Some recoveries can't be measured by machines. But they can be measured through eyes and laughter. Another early morning, I saw him post a photo on the local Tai Chi group page. It was a picture of him walking with 3 new friends at the nearby park. I wasn't surprised he went outside. I was surprised he was the one who invited others to join. When I asked why, he said, "I don't walk to stay fit. I walk so my brain doesn't stay still." And he was right. As long as blood keeps flowing, the brain still has hope. Our final appointment at the end of the 3rd month moved me most. Mr. Walter didn't bring a journal, didn't tell any new stories. He just sat quietly for a bit, then looked at me as if searching for the right words. And then he said, "Yesterday, I recited an old poem to my granddaughter. Didn't have to read it. Didn't forget a word. And when I finished, she looked at me like she'd never seen her grandfather before." I sat there in silence. Because I understood, this wasn't just the return of memory. It was the return of a grandfather, a teacher, a man whole again. 3 months. No pills. No medical procedures. Just a series of small actions done at the right time: eat dinner early, avoid sugar at night, gentle walks, go to bed on time, and above all, believe in your own ability to recover. Some wait for miracles. Others, like Mr. Walter, create them, one small choice at a time, each night. Dinner can save your brain or take away your memory, voice, and clarity. When Mr. Walter walked out of the clinic after his final appointment, I watched him in silence. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was trying to imprint something deeper than any test result into my memory. That a man who once had a mild stroke, now without medication or devices, just by eating dinner the right way, had regained his voice, memory, sleep, and the loving gaze of his granddaughter. Science can prove many things. But some truths must be seen with the heart to be fully understood. That seemingly ordinary dinner was the beginning of a resurrection. If you eat dinner late, go to bed with a full stomach, or often have sweets before sleep, remember, you are adding extra pressure to your brain every night. Poor blood flow. Toxins aren't cleared. And day by day, memories, agility, your voice, will slip away without you even realizing it. But the wonderful truth is, the brain after 60 can still heal itself if you give it the chance. And that chance begins with the most ordinary things. Eat dinner before 7 p.m. Avoid sweets at night. Take a gentle walk after dinner. Keep your sleep space quiet, and most importantly, believe you can refresh yourself again. You don't have to change your whole life overnight. Just begin with one on-time dinner, and one gentle sleep, and it's enough for your brain to feel loved again. I don't say this as a doctor. I say it as someone who has held the hands of hundreds like Mr. Walter, once hopeless, then healing. All thanks to one small change each night. You deserve to live clearly with memory and as your true self. And that can begin today, tonight, in your very own familiar kitchen. If this video gave you hope, hit like, as a way to signal to others, recovery is real. Comment if you've seen your parents or yourself forget something important. And please share, because someone out there might need this message right now. Don't forget to follow the Thrive 60 Plus channel. This is where I share honest insights, just for those over 60 who want to protect their brain, emotions, and quality of life. And I believe, every proper dinner is a soft whisper to your brain saying, I still care about you. See you in the next video, where we'll continue this healing journey one small action at a time for a changed life.